All righty, here we are. Hello, hello. Here we are. We have Angela Barraza here, licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas, and myself, Jasmine Silva, also a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas. We're here with Counseling of El Paso in a heart-to-heart conversation where we're going to be addressing different questions and answers. This is a very special topic. The one that we're talking about is domestic violence. So we really do want to provide a trigger warning, just a sensitivity reminder if this is a topic that is important or you would like to look at and take your time. By all means, you can pause, you can come back to the content, take breaks as needed. It's an important conversation to have where Angela will be providing us with resources, information, and education about different aspects of what domestic violence can look like. We will be talking also about abuse, but also equality as well. We're very grateful to be here. We started these heart-to-heart conversations back in 2020, and here we are, 2022, and we have the honor of still being able to connect with everyone. We have been very, very grateful to be able to still provide resources, awareness, support in any way, shape, or form. That is really the true intent behind these, to be able to provide awareness in topics related to mental health. The other thing too is that, just as an ethical disclaimer, this talk does not replace in any way, shape, or form any form of counseling, psychotherapy, consultation, supervisory requirements, or anything like that. If you do believe you would benefit from receiving services or would like to maybe refer somebody, by all means, we will be providing our information at the end of the presentation. And of course, if you feel you need something sooner, we will be able to provide crisis emergency information as well during this presentation. You're more than welcome to participate if you like to join, ask questions. Just keeping in mind that the platform that we're using, we've used different ones. Sometimes it might be like Facebook today. Sometimes we have available our presentations also on YouTube. Just keeping in mind that whatever is posted is not private, it's not confidential, it would be public. Just being very mindful of whatever information you feel comfortable sharing on any feed. Without any further ado, we want to pause here and present Angela Barraza. So Angela Barraza is a licensed professional counselor who has been trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, motivational interviewing, screening and brief motivational interventions, trauma-informed care, individual crisis and group crisis interventions, trust-based relational interventions, cognitive behavioral therapy, and also domestic violence education, intervention, prevention, and nonviolence group facilitation. Ms. Barraza has an extensive experience working with nonprofit communities and really believes in instilling and building strong connections that help build resilience. We're very grateful to be able to have you here today, Angela, and honestly, it's an honor for you to be sharing all of your depth and knowledge to this important community in El Paso.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Jasmine. I'm very honored to be here with you today.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having us. And I think we want to go ahead and maybe start by opening up this topic. It's a very important topic. And I think the most common thing that comes up a lot for people is like, what is domestic violence? A lot of the times people are hesitant or afraid to use that word because either it has certain stigmas or it has certain associations tied to it. How would you define it from your professional experience? What is domestic violence, Angela?
Yes, Jasmine, I do think there is a lot of stigma when it comes to that topic. And it's important to know that there are different types of abuse that help define domestic violence. So domestic violence is any type of abuse or violence against a partner, a family member, or anyone who lives in the same home. So that could be, a roommate or any family member that lives in the home.
Correct. Angela, I think I was under impression at times that it would only have to be with partners. But what you're sharing is that it could also be within the family.
Right. There's another term that's called intimate partner violence, which is only between partners. And with partners, it applies even if the individuals are not living together. So for example, if you're dating, but you don't live together, that is still considered either intimate partner violence or domestic violence.
I did not know that. And I think that there is a lot of sometimes, I guess, misconceptions that the individuals have to live together. But what you're describing is violence can happen even if they're not in the same household physically.
Right. If they're in a relationship, and there is some type of abuse or violence between them, then that would still be considered domestic violence. Mm-hmm.
Got it. And, as we're entering this concept of domestic violence, I'm wondering, what are the different forms of abuse? I mean, you're presenting us with some important things. It could be in the family. It could be two individuals, like two partners.
Yes.
A partner,
Mm-hmm.
but then they could live together or not. So I wonder what would constitute like abuse or to be to meet the criteria for domestic violence.
Yes, so there are actually 4 types of abuse. There's physical abuse, which would be hitting, pushing. It's anytime you use physical force. It could be slamming doors, punching the wall, breaking objects. And then there's verbal abuse, which includes yelling, bad words, threats. And then there's emotional abuse, which would be belittling a person, name calling, putting somebody down, making them feel bad, making them feel guilty. This is where playing mind games on a person. There's that term that people use sort of as gaslighting. Well, these are the psychological mind games that people will use against other people. And then there would be sexual abuse, which would include, not only for sex, but forcing a person to do anything they do not want to do sexually, making a person feel uncomfortable or guilty. So that would be the 4 types of abuse, which includes physical, verbal, emotional, and sexual.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be physical only, that it could look in any way, shape, or form where it sounds like either a person has been disrespected, maybe they have been humiliated in some way or coerced. I'm sensing too, as you're describing, even for sexual, emotional, and then physical too. And
yes, that's right.
Verbal, you described verbal, like negative messaging too, as well. And I know that one common thing that I've heard sometimes Angela talked about is like the wave of abuse, or I think you regarded a wave or cycle of abuse. Can you tell us maybe more about what do people refer when they talk about that concept?
Yes, so this is referred to, like you said, either the wave of abuse or the cycle of abuse. And what it includes is so there's 3 phases. The first phase would be the tension building phase. And during that phase, what is happening is one person, maybe they're in a bad mood, or they're acting maybe a little mean. And then the other person is being very careful not to do anything to upset the other person. And that's where the term, walking on eggshells is. You're careful not to do anything so that the other person gets upset. So then what happens in the second phase is you have your abusive incident, which can be maybe a physical abuse incident or verbal or emotional, but that would be the incident of abuse. So then the third phase would be they usually refer to this as the hearts and flowers phase. It is the apology, I'm so sorry. I did it because I was upset. I was very stressed out. I'll never do it again. And then, so what happens, the individuals go on with their regular routine and everything seems okay. And then again, it happens again. You have the tension building phase. Maybe there's little arguments here and there, but then you have that abusive incident. And then once again, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And usually what happens in these situations is the periods between these incidents, they get shorter and shorter. So for example, maybe the first time it happened, it was 3 months ago, right? Mm-hmm. So then, something happens and the individuals go 3 months without any incident, but then another incident occurs. And then maybe again, 3 months later. But then it turns into maybe a month, only a month in between. Maybe it ends up where it's every weekend. But that's what would be the wave of abuse or the cycle of abuse, is where you're following this consistent pattern.
I see. So it sort of normally starts out with like the tension building that you described. And then there's two responses, right? Like for the other individual who's sort of like on the other end receiving it is walking on eggshells, very hypervigilant, tippy-toeing. But then there is the moment of the incident where either there is some sort of physical abuse, emotional abuse, something impactful on the individual. But then you described I think you called it the remorse phase, where they apologize and do lots of flowers and I guess like apologizing and so forth. However, what you're describing is that the how long these incidents last for, like the pacing in the beginning might be like, oh, maybe it was every 3 months, but then as they start increasing and more, it starts to have maybe more impacts on the individual as these windows are decreasing more and more and more, meaning right. they're more frequent.
And usually the situation, sometimes they can escalate. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Absolutely, Angela. So it can really have some detrimental impacts on the individuals, well, especially the one who is in this case like receiving or is receiving the abuse. Now, I know that as we're talking about abuse, there's also an important concept that is normally talked about. And I wondered if, you can elaborate more about what is the power and control wheel. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, so the power and control wheel was created in Duluth, Minnesota by a domestic abuse intervention program in Duluth. Okay. And that is 8 tactics that we use to try to control other people. Okay. And so if you look at the wheel, it has these 8 tactics within the wheel. And then on the outside of the wheel, it says physical violence or sexual violence. Usually what happens is when these different tactics are not working for us, the person may resort to the things that are inside the wheel. Mm-hmm. And so I'll explain each one. I'm going to start at the top. So the first power and control tactic on there is intimidation. And so this is making a person afraid. It can be with looks, with gestures, the tone of voice, maybe, destroying things in the home or being abusive towards pets. It's using threatening behaviors to intimidate the other person, to cause fear in them. And so then the next power and control wheel tactic is emotional abuse. And like I said before, this is one of the 4 types of abuse. So it's putting an individual down, calling them names, making them feel guilty, maybe humiliating them. So then the next one, you have isolation. Isolation is trying to control what a person does, trying to control who they talk to, where they go. Maybe you tell the person that they're not allowed to go certain places because of jealousy. Maybe you're monitoring their cell phone usage, and sometimes they justify their actions saying that, well, I'm a jealous person. So that's isolation. And also maybe you try to control who they talk to, not only their friends, but their family as well.
Okay.
So then the next power and control tactic you have is minimizing, denying, and blaming. And this is in regards to abusive behavior. So for minimizing, this is to make the situation seem smaller than what it is. So for example, if I push my partner and I say, well, I just pushed you. It's not like I hit you. What I did wasn't that bad. I could have done worse. So it's making it seem like what I did is not as bad as what it really is. So that would be minimizing. Denying would be complete denial. I yell at you, I call you names, and the next day I tell you, no, I didn't do that. No, I did not do that. So just denying the behavior, period.
Even happened.
Yeah, I say I'm not abusive. I don't do those things. So then the last one would be blaming, of course. That would be placing the responsibility on the other person. So let's say, for example, if I were to get your cell phone and I throw it at the wall and it breaks and I say, well, it's your fault. You're the one that made me upset. And if you would have just showed me your cell phone, I wouldn't have broke it. So then instead of taking accountability for my actions, I'm saying it's your fault I did this. If you wouldn't have gotten me upset, I wouldn't have done this. So that would be blaming. So those I went through the first four. Do you have any questions about those first four?
No,
Jessica?
those four are pretty, just in those four, they're hard, right? Like experiencing this is hard in itself. I see that there's more too.
Yes, so the next one would be using the children. This is anytime that the person uses the children to manipulate, and it can be in different ways. Let's say if the individuals are separated and they're saying, well, we need to get back together because of the children need both of their parents. So they're using the children to manipulate the other person. It could be that they make the other parent feel guilty. Maybe they blame the parent because of the children's behaviors, or they threaten to take the children away, or they threaten to hurt the children. So it's using the children to manipulate the other person.
Okay.
So then the next one is economic abuse. This one is where perhaps maybe the person doesn't let the other person work, or they make the other person ask for an allowance, or ask for money, controlling all the money, not allowing the other person to have access to the accounts. So that would be economic abuse. And then the next one, I know on this will, this is a will for men. So it actually says male privilege on there, but it's also referred to as gender privilege. So what gender privilege is where you set those gender roles. Like, for example, if I say, well, you're the man, you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that, or you're the woman and you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that. Why? Because that's what's expected. It's also maybe if you put those, like, for example, with male privilege, it would be, well, I'm the king of the house. You need to ask me permission to do these things. I'm in charge. So things like that. And vice versa, if it's the woman, I'm the queen of this castle and I'm in charge. And
yeah, it could go that way too, right?
Right. So then the next one, you have coercion and threats. This is coercion is manipulation. So you're manipulating the other person. You're getting them to do something that they don't want to do, or you're basically getting them to do what you want them to do. And you can do that in different ways. You can threaten them, threaten to leave them, there's also examples of where you threaten to commit suicide if they leave you. Maybe you threaten that you're going to tell their job about certain behaviors. And another way of manipulation, not only by threats, but maybe if you do something and then you're sending the other person gifts and trying to manipulate them to forgive you. So those are the 8 tactics of the power and control wheel. And like I said, before, is that usually we do use these tactics to try to control other people to get what we want. And then when that doesn't work, then we'll resort to either physical violence or sexual violence.
I see. I'm gonna pause right here with the sharing. Um, one of the things that stood out is I think that one of the things that I've learned sometimes is about like the financial component. I think that that's one that surprises a lot of the times people when they find out like that transparency or making shared decisions being an important one. Sometimes people don't think that that would even be considered an element of power or control if one person has the whole say in how, excuse me, how finances are distributed, how decisions are made together. And I've learned that sometimes economic abuse is one that comes up as surprising for individuals when they start reflecting either on their relationship or family home life. Too, I wonder if there's something that you've noticed as well, Angela.
I do believe that, Jasmine. I think sometimes it goes unnoticed. For example, if you have one person who's the sole provider in this relationship, and then the other person doesn't have an income, so then they are completely dependent on the other person. So then, the money that's coming into this family, it should be for the family, for every individual. And so that way they make these economic decisions together.
Which kind of brings us now to another concept of the equality, because I actually know, well, because it brings us to another question that comes up. So if we understand that this is power and control, and this is how abuse can look like emotionally, physically, a lot of these domains where power is solely on one individual and removed from another person, where ideally would be shared, what would a healthy relationship look like, Angela?
Well, Jasmine, you did mention the word equality, right?
Yeah.
And so this relationship, it belongs to both individuals in this relationship, right? So it would be, respecting each other's individuality, but also coming to mutually satisfying agreements where it benefits both of you. Both of you are in this relationship. Both of you can make decisions together where you're both happy with the outcome.
That's right.
Yeah, with that, and then you bring up equality, right? So then there's the equality will, which mirrors the power and control will. And instead of using those 8 tactics in the power and control will, the equality has what you should do instead of using those tactics. And so the way it works is that in the same block where you have the power and control will, what is recommended is in the exact same spot. So for example, we start with intimidation. We have non-threatening behavior, and it's acting in a manner to where the other person feels safe and they feel comfortable expressing themselves in front of you. So, and that would be through your facial reactions, your gestures, your body language. So trying your best to act in a manner to where the other person feels safe and comfortable expressing what they feel, their thoughts, their feelings, and opinions, which ties into the next equality will, which is respect, right? And that's accepting an individual for their thoughts, their feelings, and opinions, listening without judgment. And then instead of using isolation, it's trust and support, having trust in the relationship, having trust in that person, and supporting, whatever the person wants to do, their goals, supporting their friends, their own feelings and activities. So then instead of minimizing, denying, and blaming, you have honesty and accountability. It's number one, admitting your behaviors, right? Admitting your behaviors, accepting that it was wrong, and then, doing whatever it takes to make it better, and apologizing, of course, but then not repeating the behavior. If you think of that, wave of abuse, what happens is abusive incident happens, I'm sorry, and eventually the I'm sorry's, sometimes I'm sorry doesn't exist anymore. So it would be actually changing the behavior. So then instead of male privilege, you have using the children, you have responsible parenting. The children, it's both parents' responsibility to take care of the children, being a positive nonviolent role model, and sharing those responsibilities. So then you have, instead of, it would be either, like I said earlier, male privilege or gender privilege, you have shared responsibility, where you share that this home belongs to both individuals, sharing the housework, sharing decisions in the relationship, making those decisions together. And then instead of economic abuse, you have economic partnership, where you share the finances, you make those decisions together, and both individuals benefit from financial arrangements. And then instead of using coercion and threats, you have negotiation and fairness. It's coming to a mutually satisfying agreement where both individuals benefit. It's making a compromise. And so in a healthy relationship, Jasmine, ideally, you would want to have all of those, right?
All of these, and they sound essential because I heard safety, right? We want to feel safe. I also heard that we should allow the other person to be themselves, but we should also be able to be ourselves, and that it should be a culture in the relationship where respect is important, where opinions, values, who we are as individuals are not degraded or minimized, where we're humanized. Also, I heard a lot of cooperation, in sharing decisions, sharing responsibility, that actually help cultivate trust, and then a lot of commitment too as well. And then the other part of it, I loved how you emphasized also on fairness. And then you described even earlier too, it's about making a mutual decision to share time together, a life together, or a family together, where it's in benefit of both individuals. It benefits the whole system, the whole, whether it's a pair of two individuals or a whole family system too.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing this. This is really insightful information, because it helps us. We can know what's not okay, but sometimes we also need to know, well, what would that look like? What would be ideal, right? Or what would we be like our little North Stars as well. I wonder what else comes up for you, Angela, as we're talking about this. I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to add or elaborate on the equality, or even on the topic of domestic violence.
You know what, Jessa? Well, I mean, relationships are not perfect, right? They take work, right? But when you think of all those factors of having respect, and like you said, working on safety and people being who they want to be, then you can definitely have healthy relationships.
Of course, it's possible, right?
Right.
Now, let me ask you, let's say we have individuals, viewers here, or individuals who are just maybe connecting to the material. Maybe they are seeing signs, or they're curious, or they're starting to wonder about some of the stuff, whether things were on the power and control wheel, or maybe goals perhaps that they would like to see change, where they're on a relationship where they might be experiencing anything similar like this. What are some resources? What are some referrals that maybe we can provide, maybe to start guiding individuals? Granted, I realize there might be tiers too of need, whether they're already in a situation where they need immediate support, or they're starting to maybe wonder or wanting to do maybe their own work to possibly explore.
I think it's very important, if you do realize that you find yourself in a situation similar to this, is to recognize that you're not alone. Sometimes we feel like we're alone in the issues that we're having, but you're definitely not alone, and you can reach out to individuals that can help. There are certain organizations that offer free services as well. There's also a domestic abuse hotline that you can use. The Center Against Sexual and Family Violence has many resources. They have their Family Resource Center where you can receive therapy, support groups, classes. And then, of course, they also have an emergency shelter just in case if needed. The Center for Children also has some victim services, as well as the El Paso Child Guidance Center. They also have therapy services available. Then, of course, there's also a couple of shelters. The YWCA has a shelter. There at the police station, they actually also have victim services, and the county attorney's office and the district attorney's office.
So if somebody is seeking services, they can go with either these points of contacts who can maybe start helping them enroll or get more information about receiving services, either at free or little to no cost, depending, I guess, on what service they're provided or what they qualify for. Did I capture that right, Angela?
Yes, depending on the need and what exactly is they're needing, and then what they qualify for. Yes.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to add for today's conversation, Angela? I know you really are leaving us with an important message of we're not alone, and that if we need it, there are resources, that there is support available. I heard a lot of support. I was learning, there's a lot of community organizations that we have here available in El Paso too. I wonder if there's anything else that comes up for you, Angela. Any last thoughts?
No, I don't think so, Jasmine. I think that's it for today. And I would say just, if you do notice these things, or you notice that you're doing these things, there are things you can do to change those behaviors.
That's right too. That's a very good point, because if this is happening and let's say the individual is the one who's causing it, there's always help too. There's always an opportunity to grow and reflect to see what that might be about. So I'll go ahead and share some information with us. If you by chance are interested in maybe learning more about us, by all means, you can call our office at 915-209-1234. You can visit our website at www.counselingofelpaso.com. We'll go ahead and put the link below too. We have wonderful providers here as well. Know that at any point, if for whatever reason or circumstances, like if we're not able to work, we will always provide referrals, especially in the community. We're always happy to connect, especially when it comes to seeking help or support. Thank you so much, Angela. It's an honor meeting with you again. Thank you so much once again. And nos vemos pronto. May you have a wonderful rest of your day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.